You're listening to Pro Booth Talk, education and insights for photo booth company owners.
Welcome back to Pro Booth Talk. Always good to start a show with Laps Laugh.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
So during PBX this year, I got asked quite a bit. It seemed like the question of the year was when I went full time. So I thought we would discuss that a little bit. I don't know.
Boy,
Everyone's
that
going to
is
have
the
so many
ultimate
different answers,
question.
but yeah.
When did you go full time, Jason?
Well, first, I think it's I get why people are asking, but I think it's a poor indication of success because you have people like Zach that aren't full time yet. He still has a full time job and he's incredibly successful. So, I mean, I don't know how, but you can do this part time and be successful. So it's not really a proper indication, I think, of success. I am full time. And I'm also a very unique situation because I sold a business, moved back to Vegas, and was looking for a business to get into with the understanding that I was all in from day one. So I was always full time. It's not really, I don't know. I don't have a lot of insight on when is the right time to go full time because I knew I what it takes
You
to
were all
start a
in from the
business.
beginning.
Yeah. So I had my business plan. I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to pay myself for a while. I knew everything was going to have to go back into the business. And that was the plan from the beginning. And not everyone has the ability to do that, I get.
Yeah.
So I guess, what about you?
You know, I bring it up a lot. Like I started this as a hobby. I actually started as a photographer. The irony of it was yesterday we did an event on a yacht, and I was on this yacht 14 years ago as a wedding photographer because that's how I started. I started as I was a self-taught photographer, and it just went back into full circle when I was at this event yesterday at this yacht. But I started as a hobbyist, and I never even knew that this was an entire industry. I didn't know this was an entire business that people got into because this was early on too, because photo booths is really early. Like it's early in the industry technically at that time, right? Like that was like the beginning of the industry at that time. So I never even thought of it as a business at first. Like it was just something that I did for fun, for friends, for family. And through the years, I started, getting referrals from friends, and that's how it grew. So I've always, in my mind, have always been part-time. And the question has come up because people have asked me in the past too, like, Lap, when are you going full-time? I'm a full-time mom. If anybody asks me to this day, you guys, and that's the reason why everybody comments about how I don't respond until like 2:30 in the morning. It's because those are my operating, those are my hours. I mean, I'm a mom from 8 a.m. to 10:30 at night, and then I start working from 10:30 to 3 or 5 a.m. or how, depending on how much work I have. But at one point, the company was doing 300, 350 events, but in my mind, it's still part-time. Like I've never identified, I don't know if that's even the right way to say it, but I've never seen myself as a full-time photo boother. Although, if you're going to be successful at this, your mindset is always a full-time boother. Like it doesn't matter if I'm a mom during the day, my mind is always thinking about the business, it's thinking about photo booths, it's thinking about like what's the latest and greatest, like what's the new thing that we can do. So my mind is always thinking about business. So my mind is a full-time boother, but I've always thought of myself as a part-time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of a lot of the successful companies is that mindset of always, it just doesn't turn off. I'm constantly thinking about workflows and processes and how to do things better. If it's not adding products, it's systems or rewriting emails or email templates or something. There's just
Improving
every day, all day.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we started recording, we were just talking about this. We were just talking about how every day we have a to-do list of like things that we absolutely have to do. I had one yesterday too, and you get caught up with just doing so many things. At the end of the day, you look at your day and you're thinking, what the heck did I do? You're busy all day. You're doing stuff for your business all day, but you didn't hit all the all the to-do lists or even one thing on the to.
Yeah, and that was my story for yesterday that we were laughing about before we came on, because I came
Yeah,
in very determined. I had a list of things that I had to get done. I wrote out my list, and then at the end of the day, I felt when I was leaving, I felt really productive. I felt like, because I was really, really busy all day, and then I realized that I never even glanced at my lists, and then I was like, what did I do? I feel like I was definitely
exactly.
busy, but you know, things get sidetracked, and you go down these wormholes, and it's sometimes it's hard to stay focused. And I'm sure whatever I did was important too.
Productive. Yeah. You know what? That got to me one day. So I sat there and I did a list where I was like, dude, I feel like I didn't accomplish the things that I had to get done. So you end up cramming a lot of things. Like for me, I end up cramming certain things like the night before the event. So I stay up like with no sleep. So one day I sat there and I was like, okay, what the heck did I do? Because in my mind, I felt like I was productive, but I don't feel like if I looked at my day, I can't even remember what I did. So I remember one day I actually did a list of everything that I did. And it ended up being a crazy list because we actually we wear so many hats, and a lot of it is just small, mundane type, things that you're doing, but they take time and they end up, killing your day.
Yeah.
Part of being a business owner. And it's frustrating sometimes because this to-do list keeps on growing. But that's the reason why, like, I feel like if your mindset is not already full-time, whether you do one event a month, back then I used to do, when I first started, I think like I was happy to do like 12 events a year. Like that's how I was ultra part-time, right? Like, but my mind was not part-time. Like I was spending 4 days, trying to like learn and figure out workflows and like technology and testing out software. So my mind was full-time. I didn't do full-time events, if that's what that question
Right.
means. Yeah. So I think it means different things to different people because
Yeah, and I think the next fireside check-in that we do, maybe we should bring it up, because I know there's some stories there, especially like Sean isn't full-time yet, so he can have some input. And I know Min grew pretty successfully. I think he was working for Apple, and he had some milestones he had to reach before he would go full-time, so he would have some good insight. So maybe we'll bring that back up next month when we're talking about that, or talking with everybody. But essentially, I mean, like, a lot of this seems obvious, I guess, but you have to make sure you're making enough money to support your lifestyle. And, whatever you're making now, you need to be making that or more. You should be charging enough that you can hire staff, whether or not you're working the events, whether or not you want to work the events. You need to be charging enough that you can properly grow, because if you think you're making enough right now, but you're doing that charging like $400 an event or something, you're not going to be able to continue to grow, and you're going to hit a hump or an issue or something, and it's going to fall apart. So I mean, you obviously need to have money in the bank. I guess you need to figure out like your other stuff. Like my wife works for local government, so we have like insurance and those things taken care of. But that would be a hard hurdle if we didn't have that. Like it would be hard to go full time and give those things up, and it's incredibly expensive. We were looking at doing that for our staff recently and realized there's just no way that we can. It's incredibly expensive.
But isn't there a thing about like it takes 5 years for your average business to like
I
break
think
even?
Yeah, I think most businesses fail like in the first 2 years or something like that. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just
But well, I think restaurants have like a really high failure rate, but
yeah, incredibly
heard
high.
of yeah, but I've heard of a thing where it's like when you start a business, it takes 5 years to break even, right? And then after that, you start profiting. So you could be full time. Like I was 100% invested in my business once I, redirected my energies and saw it as a business. I was 100% directed, focused on my business, but I wasn't making full-time pay, but I was definitely putting in the full-time work. So if I had a brick and mortar, I would have been a full-on business operating at a deficit. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't operating, like a business full
Right.
time, because I was, and the thing is like for me, even though I wasn't doing the type of volume or even like the revenue that, eventually in the later years I'm doing, those early years when I was invested in just learning our industry, learning all the different software, all the different hardware. That ended up benefiting me in the later years, you know? So, I can't even say that I was not. That's such a tough question because people do ask me like, Lap, you know, are you full time? Are you part time? I never know. Me myself personally never really know how to answer that because I always just answer like I'm part time, but I've always felt like 100. I'm 100% full time mentality wise.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's see some of the questions that we had pulled up here. Were there any financial or personal milestones you set before making the transition? Again, that doesn't really apply to either of us, but I mean, some obviously there should be some revenue goals, and I kind of mentioned that you need to be able to support yourself and have a solid plan to keep moving forward. You need to certainly have money in the bank because trust me, like especially if you're
There's
getting tons of business
extreme
from a couple
highs and
planners,
lows. Yeah.
like that
Especially in the
planner may need.
beginning. Yeah. I was just having a conversation about that with somebody. Like sometimes it's that one big contract, you know, and then you think it's a solid contract and then boom, it falls through. So you really do have to have like some liquid assets to be able to like live off of it. Cause you can't, it's not like you can't control events that fall through. You can't control, you know, when you have peak seasons. Sometimes you have like there's certain months that are like more busy for us, like May, October, December. But you're still gonna have a drop off of, you know, some years you're gonna have really crazy Mays and Aprils, and some months, some years you're not.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you're going to be in a situation where you're going full time, you're going to be doing more corporate stuff, or I guess everyone's going to be aiming to. And
And
corporate
it's
stuff, a lot
heavy
of times,
swings.
yeah, there's going to be those swings, and a lot of times corporate wants to pay on like net 30s and things like that.
Or
So
even worse.
you need to be able to, yeah, or even worse.
Net 30 is mild.
I finally got paid for my New Year's job. It was on net 30, but I got paid like the first week of March, and it was a very big ticket, so it was
Yeah.
a bit painful. I mean, I think we had to buy like $10,000 worth of equipment for the event. So that's another thing. Like a company may want to book you for a big job, and you may need to buy, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 worth of equipment. So you need to have that in
The
the
initial
bank,
investment.
and you need to pay. This was this took like 15 staff members for this job. So I had to pay them. So there's a lot of expenses that have to come out of pocket. So you have to have good money management skills, and you have to have that nest egg, I guess. So.
Yeah.
Let's see what other questions came up. I feel like this is going to be a pretty short episode, and that's okay. They don't all need to be 2 hours.
Yeah, that night was wild. I cannot believe we're on there for 2 hours. And I think if we kept on talking, we would have eased. That's the thing about like when we talk about business with like your peers, you literally can talk about business all day long and you still never run out of things to talk about. We had to cut it short last time, even though the short was 2 hours.
Oh
Short was
yeah,
2
I'm
hours for
sure
anybody that watched.
you get the 6 or 7 of us. If Hal ever joins, we could talk for 3 or 4 hours pretty easily. Especially if we have some cocktails or something, it makes it pretty easy. Let's see. These are questions that ChatGPT gave me that it thought that we should address for this question. What were some of the biggest fears or doubts you had, and how did you overcome them? Again, I guess I should have read through these questions before starting, because I mean I didn't have any fears or doubts because I was going all in from the beginning. I mean, I had some obviously fears and doubts about starting the company. A lot of companies fail, but I've had a lot of companies that fail as well, that have failed as well. So I understood the risks coming in.
I mean, the common fear is like for me was like, what do you do if you just get blown away by the competition? Like as the years were stacking on, you start realizing like how many people were entering the industry every single year because there's a very low barrier for people. And we started seeing like florists entering, planners, venues. The big talk back when it was early on was if this was, what do you call that, where it was just like a temporary, like there was like a buzz where photo booths were gonna go out of style. Do you remember that, Jason? Like
It's
it was
always,
like,
it's still a buzz. Like everyone is
is
always
it?
thinking. But I had the conversation with Alan at one point. So if anyone doesn't know Allenberg's backstory, he was like marketing director. So he was somebody at the Knot, like some decision maker at the Knot. And they, for the longest time, refused to add photo booths as a category because they thought it was going to be like chocolate fountains and just be a really quick passing
What are
phase.
chocolate fountains? I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Or the candy stations. Remember that?
Yeah. So when the industry was early on, like 10, 11 years ago, like the buzz was like, this is going to go out of style in like 2 years. So there was that initial like concern of like, man, you're going to go and invest in like, back then not enclosures, but now the photo booth shells, they're pretty affordable now. I mean, they're still, if you're new, they're gonna seem like a lot, but like back then, we talked about this where like photo booth shells back then were like $8,000, $10,000 just a shell. Like we're not,
Yeah.
that's not even, you're not even talking about everything else that you need tech wise. And the buy-in for all of that stuff, printers back then was like a basic printer was like $1,200 back then, so to invest all of that and to constantly hear in your ear, and it was a buzz that was in the forums too, like this is gonna go out of style in like 2 years. So that really concerned me when I figured out that this was the entire industry. And then also just being blown away by competition, because like if you, especially here in Southern California, we have like a very competitive market. Like I mean, within 50-mile range, we probably have like 200 photo boothers in like a 50-mile, like that's, and in some markets, there's only like 10 providers total. We have like 50, and I could say like 10-mile range probably. So there was always that concern of like, how do you stand out? How do you compete in a market that's oversaturated? So that was always things that came up for me. And then also like, the topic comes up of like pricing, like if everybody's priced at a certain amount of dollars, how are you able to charge? How can you survive in a market that's charging so low? So that always crossed my mind. If this could be sustainable as a business once I started seeing it as a business. So those are the common things I think a lot of boothers, even like 4 years and below, those come up. And like, how do you stand out in your market? How do you consistently win business? All those things, just regular business questions that come up that cross your mind. And then like when you have a sluggish month, I think like for me, January is really sluggish. It's like, oh my gosh, am I about to do I have to shut my doors now? Like the first years I started, I didn't realize there was like seasons where you're just more busy. Of course, you know this. But like when you're in it and you're invested in it, you're just thinking, you just start panicking like, oh gosh, like I have no leads this month. Like, what do I do? And then, February, March, you just blow up. You have to get used to those like extreme ups and highs and lows and things like that.
Yeah, and that panic always, pricing is one of the first things that are affected.
Yeah.
You start getting panicked and you start decreasing your prices. But what's funny is that it's not a reverse. A lot of times when people start getting busy, they just buy more booths. They don't increase their pricing. They don't treat it the same. So,
yeah,
when you start slowing down, you don't sell booths. You decrease your pricing. So when you start getting busier, you should have the same mentality and increase your pricing. And I just go out and
yeah, that was an adjustment for me. That was an adjustment for me, Jason, because I struggled through that. Like when I was like priced very low early on in my career, when I started getting more leads than because I only had one booth. And when I started getting more leads where the possibility of having two, instead of like raising my prices, which makes sense, right? Like supply and demand, I was just thinking, oh shoot, I need another booth. So I bought a second booth, then I bought a third booth. And then that's when like the relationships with people in our industry and having these conversations with people in our industry, that's when I understand the concept of supply and demand. I learned all of that. But when you're invested in the business, when you're in it, you're just not thinking like that. You're just thinking, oh, I have 3 bookings. I need 3 booths. And you go buy the booths.
You want to expand. You want to be bigger.
Yes.
So you see these other people
You're
in the
just
groups
excited.
that have multiple booths.
Yeah.
But that would, I think, would probably be my biggest like advice to new companies is don't buy more equipment. Increase your prices.
Yes.
Like keep increasing your prices until you're getting like at least 60% no's. If you're getting more no's or more yeses than you're getting no's, then your prices are way too cheap. Keep increasing those prices.
Yes.
And once you get to a point where you're getting 30 to 40, 35% yeses, you should be making pretty good money at that point. At least I'd say $1,000 per booking. gross, and then start expanding those booths. And it's going to be a lot easier for you as well because you can afford them now. You're not going to be taking out loans or going into debt. You're going to be able to comfortably pay your employees and do employee outings and things like that because you have that revenue coming in. It automatically is built in. Now, it's funny about you're mentioning how expensive booths were in the beginning. The entire dynamic has changed so much. I remember like when we used to go to events, one of the biggest things we would always hear is like, oh my God, this is like a real booth. Because when you have those super expensive booths, that created a massive DIY booth market. And you had like all these super, super shady booth companies that were like building things in their garage. And
That
some were
was
really
me.
nice.
I was one of those.
Some were really nice, but yeah, like this box fan community that were buying those like 30-inch box fans and converting
The
them into
IKEA mirrors.
the
Yeah,
IKEA mirrors, and
cabinets.
there's a lot of photos going around. I remember one that was like a step ladder that had like an iPad like clamped to it or something like that, or is a camera clamped to it. But you had some really, really poor DIY booths going on, and it really made it easier for the people that actually invested to stand out. But now booths are so cheap that even the newest companies have really nice equipment.
Yeah.
Let's see. Fears and doubts, check. See, the biggest advice you'd give to someone still juggling full time and their photo booth side hustle, obviously, like, don't treat it like a side hustle, and don't ever. I was working with somebody once, a friend of mine wanted to start a photo booth company, and I was trying to help him out, and I just remember him like he was a waiter, and he told a client once that if they wanted to book him for a certain day that he was working, they would have to pay extra because he would have to pay someone to cover his shift. And he was like, but they'll understand that they have a job too. And I like that concept of just expecting people to understand to support your side hustle and pay extra so you could take the time off. There's other photo booth companies out there, and they're actual companies. You're telling this person right from the beginning, I'm not a company. I'm just
serious. Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm almost like I'm your friend that is willing to do you a favor if you pay more.
Yeah.
But they're not your friends. Like they're looking for a company that they can trust. So represent yourself that way.
Yeah. Run your company like it's a company, not as if it's a side hustle, for sure. For sure. That chits me out to hear that. But you know what? Like when you run a business, you have to have a business owner mentality, not a 9-to-5er mentality. I noticed there's a difference between the two. Like I notice people who work 9 to 5, nothing against that. People who work 9 to 5 have a certain mentality of like their job is like their primary focus. That's exactly what your friend is. Like the job is the primary focus, but like your business should be your primary focus because that's what you're investing in yourself, right? So when you do set about owning your own business, like you really should be investing in yourself. Your job is and I've had this conversation with some of the big boothers that like have a day job. Like the day job is just technically the side hustle, like, and the business is like where they really invest all their time, all their effort, even if they're putting in the hours in their daytime job. Like that's what I feel like, because it's the whole 100% business owner mentality, 100% all into your business. Like I feel if you really want to be successful with it. But I am a full-time mom, so I don't know how I can even sit there and say that, 'cause being a mom is my priority first. So I do everything business-wise at night.
Yeah, and I've done that. I mean, not full time. My wife certainly carries the burden of our parenting, but I did do like taking kids to school and taking them to buses, and I feel like I was almost more productive during some of those times because like when your kids are in school, like I had to get my kid to the bus like 5:45 in the morning, so when I dropped him off the bus, I didn't go home.
Your
I
day
came straight to
started.
the office. So yeah, I started
Yeah.
at like 6 a.m. where now I like roll into the office at like 10 a.m. and just
Like today.
yeah, exactly.
No, for
So
me, like I feel like I'm doing a lot of chauffeuring of my kids, so it's hard for me because I commute so far to drop them off, and my daughter is in kindergarten, so she does a half day, and my son, comes out regular
it's
time. So
hard.
I end up
It's
spending a lot of time on the
constantly
yeah. So that's a transition for me in this past year. Whereas like before, the school was so close that it was just go drop them off, come back. So it didn't take a lot of my day. So I'm adjusting, and it's taking me a little bit longer to like do a lot of my admin work. So I'm doing a lot of heavy work, admin work in the middle of the night, more than normal, as I adjust to like the chauffeuring of my kids, and luckily, like, I have the relationships with, like, my clients where, they understand, and,
Hmm.
it's not ideal, but you just do what you can while
Yeah, so I guess don't have a whole lot of insight on that because neither one of us really was working a full-time job and transitioned in. But it's a question that came up a lot, so I wanted to kind of address it. Hopefully there's something here that you
I
got.
I think this would be a great topic when we get on the fireside. Like, when we get on fireside, I think this will be
Yeah, we'll
great.
bring it up. And maybe
Yeah.
maybe it'll be better and maybe we'll scrap this one, but we'll see. 27 minutes, super short, love it.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Thanks, everyone.
To keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group, Pro Booth Talk Community. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider showing your support by subscribing, liking, reviewing, or sharing this topic with someone in the industry.